Imagine you've just lost the love of your life. Not to another person, not to time, but because of a single moment, a split-second decision that haunts every breath you take afterward. You go into the wilderness to heal, to breathe, to feel something other than guilt. And then someone decides you're the prey. That's apex. And that's exactly why this movie hits differently than every other survival thriller you've seen this year. Let's start where the movie starts, on the face of Norway's Troll Wall, one of the most terrifying vertical rock faces on the planet. And there she is, Usha, played by Charlize Theron. 50 years old, absolutely built like a goddess. Scaling this mountain like gravity is just a suggestion she's politely ignoring. Beside her is Tommy, played by Eric Bana. Her partner, her anchor, her person. The chemistry between them is real and raw. You feel it in the way Tommy looks at her. Not just with love, but with a kind of quiet worry. Because in that tiny tent hanging off the side of a cliff, yes, a tent dangling off a mountain like a human birdcage, he tells her something. He says he's tired. Not of her necessarily, but of this life. This endless chasing of danger and peaks and adrenaline. He wants to slow down. He wants something quieter. And Sasha, you can see it in her eyes, she hears him. But she doesn't quite know how to be still. She doesn't know who she is without the climb. Then the avalanche hits. And everything changes in 4 seconds. Tommy falls. Sasha is clinging to the rope. And she has to make the most devastating decision of her life. Do you hold on? Do you cut the rope? The movie doesn't spell it out with a dramatic monologue. It shows you her hands. Shows you her face. And then the silence after. That silence is louder than anything the film does afterward. She didn't lose Tommy to the mountain. She lost him to a decision. And grief that comes with guilt. That's a different kind of wound entirely. 5 months pass. Sasha is not okay. She's functional, but she's broken in the specific, quiet way that people who've survived something unsurvivable get broken. She drives alone. No music, no destination really. Just moving because standing still means feeling everything. She ends up in Australia. Wandara National Park. Remote, ancient, beautiful in the way that beautiful things can also be terrifying. A ranger warns her casually that people have been going missing out here. Ginat keeps driving. Because what's a missing person warning to someone who already feels like she's disappeared? At a gas station she meets Ben, played by Taron Egerton. And here's the thing about Taron Egerton in this film. You know him as the charming, lovable Eggsy from Kingsman. You might even love him as Elton John. But this is something you've never seen from him before. He's shaved his head. He's lean and strange and still. He smiles too much, talks too softly, gives directions with this odd, patient kindness that somehow reads as menacing if you're paying attention. Sasha doesn't pick up on it. Why would she? She's lost in her grief. He tells her about a beautiful river route. Grand Isle Narrows, starting at Blackwater Bay. She thanks him and drives off toward her doom while the camera lingers on him just a second too long. That's good filmmaking. That's dread being planted without a single horror movie violin sting. What Apex does really well, and what separates it from your average Netflix action movie, is that it understands the most terrifying thing isn't a monster. It's a person who looks completely normal. Ben isn't some masked slasher. He's worse. He's methodical. He's patient. He has rules. He has rituals. He has mommy issues and a philosophy about predators and prey that he's built an entire worldview around. And none of it makes sense except to him, which is exactly how real-world danger works. When the hunt begins, Sasha doesn't understand what's happening at first. She thinks she's alone in the wilderness. She thinks the threat is the river, the terrain, maybe a snake. Then she finds something she was never supposed to find. Evidence. Something left behind. And the reality of her situation drops on her like that Norwegian avalanche dropped on Tommy. She's being hunted. She's the game. And her hunter knows every inch of this terrain. The film now shifts into pure survival thriller territory. And here, this is where Charlize Theron carries the movie on her back the way her character carries herself through the Blue Mountains. Because Sasha is not helpless. She's not screaming and stumbling. She's an extreme athlete, a climber, a woman who has spent her life in impossible situations. She thinks. She adapts. She uses the environment. She outsmarts traps. But she also gets hurt. A steel trap clamps around her leg. And the scene is brutal and visceral and uncomfortable in the way that reminds you this is real stakes, not just action movie choreography. She can't just power through it with a one-liner and a heroic stare. She screams. She problem solves through tears. She keeps going not because she's a superhero but because she's a survivor. And that, right there, is the emotional core of this film. Because she was already surviving. She survived the loss of Tommy. She survived the guilt. She survived 5 months of being barely alive. And now the wilderness has given her one more impossible thing to survive. And somehow, impossibly, it becomes the thing that makes her want to live again. Let's talk about Taron Egerton for a moment, because he deserves his own conversation. Ben is written as a misogynist, sadist, a hunter with grandiose ideas about himself as an apex predator, a man at the top of the food chain doing what nature intended. It's a tired ideology. It's a real one. And Egerton plays it with this terrifying, measured calmness that makes your skin crawl. He doesn't rage. He doesn't monologue endlessly. He moves through the bush like he belongs there more than the animals do. He makes sounds, actual animal calls, that he uses as psychological warfare. He knows that fear is a weapon and he's been sharpening it for years. The film reveals his backstory in fragments. You understand that something happened with his mother. You understand that he's done this before. Multiple times. The women who went missing, they were his. This is what he does. This is who he is. And the movie has the guts not to fully explain him, because the scariest predators don't come with complete backstories. They come from the gas station at dusk with a helpful smile and directions to a beautiful river. There's a scene, I won't spoil it entirely, where Ben and Sasha are in proximity, separated by darkness and foliage, and he speaks to her, softly, like he's trying to comfort a frightened animal. And the intelligence of the scene is that you genuinely don't know whether she can hear him, whether he can see her, who has the advantage. That ambiguity is masterful tension. That's the craft of Baltasar Kormaker doing what he does best, putting humans in impossible environments and watching them fight for dignity. Can we take a moment to talk about how stunning this film looks? Because one of the things that separates Apex from your average straight-to-streaming thriller is that it was actually shot on location. New South Wales, Australia. The Blue Mountains. And the cinematography, with drone cameras swooping over gorges and waterfalls and ancient rock formations, makes the landscape feel like a character in itself. A beautiful, indifferent character that doesn't care whether you live or die. There's a tracking shot in this film that goes all the way off a cliff, and I mean all the way. The camera follows the fall, continues downward, and keeps going until the earth swallows the frame, and it is one of the most jaw-dropping things I've seen in a thriller this year. The CGI blends with the practical footage so seamlessly you stop questioning what's real and just experience the vertigo. This is a movie filmmaking in service of what some critics have called B-movie storytelling. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. Not every film needs to be Oppenheimer. Sometimes a film just needs to make your heart rate spike and your palms sweat and your eyes refuse to look away. Pex does that. Repeatedly. Efficiently. Without apology. The opening Norway sequence, the troll wall, the storm, the avalanche, is particularly extraordinary. Kormaker shot this with what appears to be real climbers on real rock faces in the real Romsdalen Valley. And it sets a visual and emotional bar that the Australian sequences then have to live up to. For the most part they do. Let me be honest with you, because that's what this channel is for. Pex is not a perfect film. The critics have been fair in pointing out its weaknesses. The script, by Jeremy Robbins, does tip its hand a little early on who the real villain is. The film attempts a misdirect, suggesting that 2 local hunters might be the threat, but Egerton's performance is so unsettling from frame 1 that the twist doesn't fully land as a surprise. You've already decided he's the problem. You just didn't know the extent of it. Ben's character, while compelling, is also somewhat underwritten. We're given fragments of his psychology but not enough to understand him fully. Some viewers will find that frustrating. Others, myself included, will argue that's the right choice. Not every monster deserves an origin story that makes you feel sorry for him. Sometimes evil is just there, present and patient and waiting for you at the next gas station. The film also struggles with pacing in its second act. There are stretches where Sasha is running and hiding and the tension is maintained but not amplified, and you start to feel the repetition of the chase. It's a small problem and Theron's performance keeps you anchored, but a few more beats of genuine surprise in the middle section would have elevated the film significantly. And yes, some of the CGI, particularly in a few of the wider landscape shots, looks slightly artificial. In an age where visual effects have raised our expectations to unreasonable heights, a few of the blue screen compositions are visible. It doesn't ruin anything, but it's there. Rotten Tomatoes sits at 66% from critics and around 55% from audiences. That sounds low. But let me put it in context. This is a Netflix genre film, a survival thriller with horror elements. The audience for it is not looking for profound philosophical insight. They're looking for a film that makes them feel something visceral and then sends them to bed slightly unsettled. Apex delivers exactly that. The critics who gave it low scores expected more than the film was trying to be. That's not a failure of the film. That's a failure of expectation management. The best survival movies aren't about whether the hero survives the wilderness. They're about whether the hero survives. I'll be careful here. But I'll tell you this. The ending of Apex is not a twist ending. It's not a shocking reversal. It's a completion. It earns what it has been building toward. And it does so with a clarity that is almost cathartic. Sasha doesn't survive because she's faster or stronger. She survives because she's smarter. Because she knows something about herself. Something that she learned on the troll wall. Something that the wilderness has been forcing her to confront. That Ben doesn't know about her. And when she uses that knowledge, it feels earned. Feels right. Feels like justice in the oldest, rawest sense of the word. And there is a final image in this film, a last shot before the credits, that I found genuinely moving. Because it circles back to everything the opening established. Doesn't explain it. It doesn't monologue about healing or grief or resilience. Just shows you a woman standing in the world. Still breathing. Still here. And after everything you've just watched, that single image carries the weight of 100 speeches themselves. I need to give Charlize Theron her flowers here. Because what she does in Apex is not just action movie competence. It's actual acting. She is 50 years old. She does her own climbing sequences. She runs through the bush for this film. She gets physically beat up by this film. And through all of it, she maintains an emotional authenticity that lifts every scene above the material it's been given. There's a moment, mid-film, when Sasha is alone and injured and exhausted and has a chance to breathe, where Theron does something extraordinary. She doesn't cry. She doesn't rage. She just sits there and you watch something happen behind her eyes. A recalibration. A decision. It lasts about 12 seconds and it contains more character development than some films manage in 2 hours. Theron has made a career out of this. Out of playing women who are formidable not just because they can fight but because of what they carry. Mad Max, Atomic Blonde. Monster. Now Apex. Each of these characters is different. But they share this quality of having survived something that should have broken them and being slightly changed, slightly cracked by the experience. That crack is where the light gets in, and where Theron's performances find their humanity. Yes. Without hesitation. But go in with the right expectations. Apex is not trying to be Silence of the Lambs. It is not trying to be Prisoners. It is a survival thriller with genuine craft. Beautiful to look at. Anchored by a towering central performance, and built on an emotional foundation that most genre films skip entirely. The grief, the guilt, the unwanted will to survive. These are real human experiences dressed in genre clothing, and they give the film a weight it would not otherwise have. Is it perfect? No. Is it the best film on Netflix this year? Probably not. Is it 95 minutes of efficient, well-made, Emotionally grounded entertainment that will genuinely make your heart race? Absolutely yes. And that's worth your evening. Apex is currently the #1 movie on Netflix worldwide, trending in 93 countries. And I think I understand why. In a world full of complicated things, sometimes you need a film that strips everything down to the oldest story in the world. A person, a wilderness, and the will to survive. Apex gives you that. And then it gives you Charlize Theron making it something more. Watch it tonight. You won't regret it.